So today's Monday, the week of Halloween, and we've got a lot of exciting things coming up around JBI. We've been busy all day. Seems like you haven't had a break from the phone all day.
Phone and emails.
Yep.
And then I've messages.
Yep. And then I've been hard at working on videos, packaging orders, removing suspension off of bikes. As you can see, we have the front forks off of a 2025 Honda CRF 250 Works Edition. And speaking of Showa front forks, we want to have just a brief moment announcing our new partnership with Showa Genuine Parts Europe. So Rad JBI is now an official dealer for Showa Genuine Parts. And this is no secret by any means. We've announced this on Instagram. If you've been on ridejbi.com as of late, there is a dedicated category to Showa Genuine Parts. And in there, you can find fork tubes, both upper and lower, axle brackets, common wear items, and much more than that. But before we touch on a whole lot of Showa stuff, we want to recap the humble beginnings of Rad JBI, moving to the Mecca of SoCal, the current status of Rad JBI, and then what you guys can expect from us here at Rad JBI. So I'll let this man take over, who started the company in 2008, and kind of share his experience starting the company and how he got his foot into the door of motocross.
Oh, thank you, man. Awesome, just kind of intro. We are very happy to be associated with Showa. They've always seemed to be one of the premier companies, but maybe a little hard to get in terms of their A-kit suspension and some of their components. So to now be in a position to be able to offer that more publicly and just able to find it, we're very happy to provide that. But yeah, man, I'm an enthusiast at heart. I just love riding dirt bikes. I started when I was 12 years old. I went to a friend's house after school one day in 6th grade, and next to his house was an empty lot, and he had two, I think, JR50s, some Suzukis, and me and my 3 other friends just took turns racing each other in this little circle track, like not even a track, but to us, it was a track. And I remember just having so much fun. So I went home, and we had some dirt bikes at home, and I asked my dad if we could fix those up and ride them. He said, hell yeah. And since then, I've always had the bug. And that feeling I got that day, the amount of fun I had, I still get this day every time I swing a leg over a bike. And that's why I still do it. You can probably understand that feeling as well. Just started riding dirt bikes at that age and just really took a liking to them. I was reading every single magazine at that time, which was Motocross Action, Dirt Rider, Dirt Bike. I think it was Racer X, and then MX Racer before Transworld came out for Don Maeda. I was getting that. And just loved it, as you guys can all probably relate to as well. Then when I was 18, I got a great opportunity to work at a place called Reno Motorsports, RMS for short. And that was a very popular and still open to this day, just your local service and parts place to go get parts. And what was cool was when people walked in, you often knew the customer. And I just had such a fun time working there because I was working with my buddies, and everybody that walked in I probably knew. So it just didn't feel like work. Like, we're selling parts, we're working on bikes, and we're doing stuff, but it just didn't feel that way. And I remember looking at the owners thinking, man, they got a cool job. After graduation of high school, I applied and got into Arizona State University, and I pursued a business degree. I did supply chain and logistics. I felt that was something that would be very applicable to really any business in terms of how to source items. As you can see, sourcing Showa parts. So I thought it'd be something that'd be very beneficial, and it turned out to be. So yeah, so during college, I was going there and I was searching for another dirt bike job. And luckily for me, I found one, but at a suspension shop. And it was called Palo Verde Suspension. Think of them as kind of the West Coast affiliate of MX Tech, which is based out of Illinois. And MX Tech, owned by Jeremy Wilkie, they make some really cool products up there. So we were their West Coast kind of affiliate, and we utilized a lot of their products. And luckily to me, the owner of it was this guy named John. Before he started that, he was practicing mechanical engineer. He also went to ASU, graduated with an engineering degree. So when I worked there, it was really neat because not only did he show me, here's how you take apart a fork and shock, but here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it. And then he explained it to me on a very in-depth level of just like physics. And up until that point, I never touched my suspension. I was always told, like, don't fuck with the clickers. I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's like the last part anybody touches, you're scared to mess it up.
Yeah.
But
some people, on the other hand, are quick to jump to the suspension
for sure
and say it's the clickers. Hence why we've made a whole video series of chassis versus suspension.
We did.
We'll save that for another day.
And I can't wait for episode 4. Got to work there for a couple of years and just learned a lot. We revalved my own bike. So I got to go ride that. And once I got to experience the difference in how you can make a bike feel through suspension, I was hooked. So no longer was my goal to just start my own kind of parts and service shop. I learned I want to be more niche. I decided let's get this ball rolling. So that's when I started reaching out to different designers and graphic artists to make up different logos. A friend of mine named Kevin Langan, he had a buddy of his staying the night at our house in college. It was an overnight because the airport was right by. So I think it was what do you call it, a layover. And he sat on the couch. He rode dirt bikes too. And I told him what I was after, and he whipped up a logo in like 10 minutes. And that'd be the JBI logo that you guys see today. And I just fell in love with it. His name's Corey Gatz, really cool guy. I think he lives here in California still. If you're watching this, man, hope things are going good. So for me, it was in college, create the brand, learn about business, graduate from that, learn all about suspension that I can. So worked at Palo Verde for about 2 years. And then I left that place to go work at a KTM dealer so I could learn more on the dealer side of things, service side of things. And I was the head suspension guy there. So if you brought any suspension to the KTM dealer I was at, I was the one that did it. But I also got to learn the other side of things. And the whole goal was for me to understand every aspect of this business, whether it's the parts guy answering the phone, I did that. Whether it's a guy in the back doing service, I did that. Or whether it's the guy being the actual owner in terms of knowing how to create a business, do accounting, do marketing, and just all the pieces that come together to create a business. I was getting experience with that. So 2008 is kind of when that got rolling. And then after college graduation, it was kind of fortunate timing. We had the housing downturn of 2008. So with a couple $1,000s down, I was able to get a house right after college. And I immediately turned that garage into the second JBI workshop. So the first JBI workshop would be in Tempe when I was going to college. And then the second one would be the house that I bought. And that's where I ran this for a good 8 years.
And then you eventually
Yes.
moved to the mecca of motocross, Southern California, back in 2018, I want to say.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. Before then, we were driving out often to California to meet up with motocross action, to do bike reviews and test reviews. And every time I went out there, it just seemed like this is the place I need to be. I looked at my buddy Zach and I said, dude, I'm going to sell my house and I'm going to move here. And he's like, okay, yeah, sure. We loaded up a budget van. And then my good friend, Stephen Ellis, which is the first kid I ever sponsored, followed me in my van. We showed up, I think, at midnight and rolled up the back door, pulled the van and the truck in here. And we just slept on some cots the first couple of days and just started piecing together the shop. But it was fun, very nerve-wracking. But again, on paper, it just made sense.
Times not only do you have the access and resources to guys like motocross action, you have all those people almost at your disposal. You get to be at the same tracks as them. You can eventually talk and meet with them. But not only that, you also have the large customer base here at Ride JBI or in Southern California. So that really advanced the settings at Ride JBI.
It did. It really streamlined how quickly we could develop. In Arizona, we do have some great tracks to choose from, but they're not all open Monday through Sunday. And sometimes the prep can be a little hit or miss. And the conditions out there are very specific to Arizona. But out here, there's always a track to go ride at or a really awesome desert spot to go ride at. So like you said, the ability to go take a bike, test it, ride it, bring it back to the shop, tune it, and then go out the next day to either the same track, just really streamline how quickly we can develop settings.
When did the DIY kits become a thing here at Ride JBI?
Those came by accident. So what happened was we started developing additional parts to install during our revalves. So it started off with just a few parts here and there. The WP air fork came out, and that took a lot of time and effort. A really big challenge. I learned a lot from that thing. But what happened was I ended up developing so many parts for it to get it to work the way I wanted to. I sat down one day and I was like, you know what? I could just repackage this up and provide it as a kit to somebody. Definitely inspired by race tech. Paul Thied came up with a really good idea of the gold valve system and to be able to provide somebody with a way to tune and modify their suspension without having to send it in. So I thought that was really cool. So that's when that started coming about, was with the AER forks. I developed a sub valve for it and a mid piston, and then the trampoline valve to go with the mid piston. And yeah, one day I sat down and went, I can just box this up and sell to people. So we started working on the DIY thing, and the response on that was really positive.
Now that we've covered the past and how Ride JBI has blown up into what it is today, let's speak of today and the present. Over the
Yes.
past few months, we've been hammering the Ride JBI YouTube channel with
Yeah.
content, whether it's Yamaha, KTM, Kawasaki, Honda. We've got a bunch of JBI spec videos. What it is in a nutshell is we take a customer's bike or suspension and then we talk about it. We talk about what we did, why we did it, and most importantly, what the rider should expect when he gets the suspension back. We also do chassis versus suspension, which we kind of touched on earlier. We also have JBI race recaps and JBI bike breakdowns. When a new bike releases, we're quick to jump on it and talk about the new changes that the manufacturer did and why they did them. Now we're sitting here today talking about what you can expect from us at Ride JBI now that we are a certified Showa genuine parts dealer.
Yes. Yeah. So the first goal that we have is to carry a lot of the consumables. So the people that are after genuine Showa fork seals, bushings, cartridge seals, just any kind of wear parts on your forks and shock, that's the first thing we're going to start stocking a lot of. So that way you can rebuild your suspension with the genuine Showa components that you want. This is important because there's a lot of components inside the fork and shock that you can't always get from the OEM, as in meaning Honda, Suzuki, or Kawasaki. Sometimes they don't break down that component assembly far enough to get a lot of the parts that we're going to carry. And then we're going to work our way to the more, let's say, technical and high performing parts, such as the lower tubes that come with that awesome. It is the Showa A kit emerald coated lower tubes.
Yep.
You see them on the Lawrence bikes, you see them on any factory bikes.
Yeah.
So we're excited to carry those because whatever Japan's doing for their coatings, it's definitely a step above than some of the coatings we can get done here in the US. So we're excited to be able to utilize that. And the same with the upper tubes. We can get Kashima coated tubes already done now. So that'll help reduce lead times and wait times. So we'll probably come up with an exchange program if you have a brand new tube where we're going to swap out some Kashima coated tubes for it and you don't have to wait for them to go to Japan and back. And then we'll be getting a lot of Showa kit suspension, which I'm really excited about because you see it on all the pros bikes, but you don't often see it on too many bikes in public. And when you do, you're like, man, how'd you get that?
Yeah. Money.
Yeah. Right? So in my opinion, Showa has always been a bit of a leader in their hardware, maybe not their settings, meaning Yamaha and their KYB settings are probably the most well liked. But what Showa has done over the course of years in terms of updating fork and their shock, meaning how it's designed and how it functions, they're definitely the quickest out there in terms of implementing it and getting it out there quickly. So I'm really excited to start sharing and also learning what Showa is doing on their kit level and then helping provide that and implement that into our OEM setups.
What I'm most excited for with this partnership with Showa is what I'm going to coin as the standard R model to the Works Edition model. So for you Honda guys, listen up because we got some exciting stuff for you. So as we mentioned earlier, on the table right now is a set of 2025 Works Edition suspension. And with that, you do get the Kashima coated upper tube. You get the titanium oxide coated lower fork tube. You also get the black axle holder, axle bracket, whatever you want to call those. Really nice as well. You also get the anodized red fork top cap as well. And for the 25 model, you also get the finger adjuster, which is really cool. The 24 and older bikes do not get that, so it's super cool that they added that to compete with some of the WP options. I think finger adjusters are a no-brainer, and for all OEMs, you should have them by now. It's almost 2025. Go ahead and put those on all the bikes.
Agreed.
Please. But anyways, what I'm getting at is, and JB kind of touched on this earlier, again, for your CRF guys, your standard R model suspension and 2 Works Edition suspension, or even A kit style suspension. What I mean by that is we can get the emerald coated lower fork tubes for you. We can also get the Kashima coated upper tubes for you, the same tubes off of the Works Edition model. Again, we can get the fork top caps for you. We can get the black anodized fork lugs for you. And then we can pair that with JBI spec settings for you as well with the JBI Titanium Pro Perch, all for a lower cost than A kit suspension. So not only you're getting A kit style looking suspension, but you're also getting A kit style performing suspension that is already custom tuned for you. So that's one of my personal favorite things about this whole partnership is really taking somebody's standard R bike and building it into their dream bike. Who wants to make their bike look like Jet Lawrence or Hunter Lawrence or Joe Shimoda, Chance Hymas?
Yeah, well said, man. And then as you guys have come to expect from us is we'll be very transparent on everything that we get, and we'll be doing a lot of back-to-back testing. So when we do get in some Showa A-kit suspension, you better believe we'll be testing that back to back against our JBI spec settings. Because again, that's how we learn. Without us going to the track or the trail, depending on the type of riding we're doing that day, and bringing extra sets of suspension with us, it's hard for us to know what can be achieved. That's why we've done those videos of KYB versus WP, so many different series of. And you always see us testing things back to back so we can not only see where we are, but possibly how much further we can go.
Mhm. And speaking of JBI spec settings, one last thing I want to touch on is a few different times off camera, you've mentioned to me that you think our JBI spec Showa 49 millimeter twin chamber spring fork is our highest performing JBI spec fork.
I do.
I want you to go on camera and say why that exactly is.
I feel like it's the highest performing fork because, again, Showa has been very quick to update their forks. They came out with the 47 millimeter twin chamber back in 02. Then they had a 48 millimeter twin chamber in about 2010, I think. They put on the CRF 250R. But then they came out with this fork. And what they did was they increased their cartridge rod size. They went from 12.5 to 14 millimeters. That is the only production fork we know of that has a cartridge size that big. That's important because the cartridge rod displaces a lot more oil now when it goes inside of the cartridge. By 14 millimeter, I mean cartridge rod size, not the cartridge size. So they increased the cartridge rod size. The upper sub tank, that's going to be in this area up here that kind of interacts with what's called your free piston compression assembly. That's been made larger in diameter. The reason I share this is because with what we're dealing here with in terms of forks and shocks, it's very much pressure based. So if we have a bigger diameter, especially for a free piston, it's not going to have to move as much when the cartridge rod goes into the cartridge. So in terms of hardware, they definitely seem to be a step ahead. Again, the settings haven't always been there. I see the reviews on the stock Hondas. I get it. But once you take the time to really iron out the settings on these forks, man, they just seem to have the best blend of comfort, hold up, and body resistance out of all the forks we work on.
I only asked because I was curious. I never asked off camera why he thinks the Showas are the highest performing JBI spec fork that we have. So I was genuinely curious. But I hope you guys learned something in today's video. We really appreciate you guys watching. We've noticed a huge increase over the past, I would say, 2 months now on the Ride JBI YouTube channel. So we're super stoked on how that's going. There'll be plenty of more videos coming up, especially with the 2025 Honda CRF 250R Works Edition. And again, as we mentioned earlier, episode 4 of Chassis versus Suspension will be filmed and uploaded very, very soon. Thank you guys again, per usual, for tuning in to the Ride JBI YouTube channel. We are signing off. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.